Okay, so what do we think about the coding so far? It's different. It's very different than HTML and CSS, right? Hmm? Well, yeah, you have colors for the different blocks. I will agree with that. But yeah, that makes things easy. I like that too. Okay, we have these toolkits that make things easy for us to look at what category of thing it is. And you know, we don't have to like type it all up from scratch, which I like. I don't like to necessarily type everything, but I love the fact that we can switch back and forth between block and text, block and text. Okay, switching back and forth allows me to drag and drop, but whenever I have to change like just a few things, or if I want to copy and paste, I like that a lot better in text. And then I'll switch back again. Okay, so we didn't really do a whole lot other than we created shapes, right? And we knew how, or learned how to create parameters, which are setting up particular things about the shape. We could change the color, we could change the outline or the fill. And order, we learned, was extremely important, right? Because I can't just put it in any order. I have to make sure that I'm layering things on the screen in the order that I want them seen. So what we learn about today is variables, okay? And so Michael looked at that, he goes, oh, we learn how to speak, we declare and assign a variable, and we learn how to declare a variable. What declaring a variable is just saying, hey, I have a bucket, okay? So I could take a couple different containers like this and say, okay, I have a variable A and a variable B. Okay, so this is just literally declaring a variable as, here's variable A, here's variable B. Problem is that there's nothing in them, right? We have created the little holding space, but it's like having a bunch of Tupperware in your home, like mom, dinner, like, okay? Declaring and assigning means, hey, I've put something in. Okay, whether I put mac and cheese, if I put in 5 blocks, whatever I put in is what I put in. That's assigning a value. So declaring, here are my variables. Okay, declaring and assigning is, oh, this variable holds this. And the weird thing is, even if I were to remove this, in order to remove it, I still have to assign something new to it. So here it's just completely empty. But once I remove it, it's still actually sort of holding the previous place value until something else new is assigned. Okay? So we're going to take a quick look at our next screen. It says read the code and make a prediction. So all we have is 2 lines of code. It'll make this a little bigger right now, so it's a little easier to read. We have this that says we have a var called x position, and it's given a value for 50. What does this line of code do? What does that blue line do? What does it do, Texas?
It gives its position.
What is getting a position?
A ellipse.
Okay, so we're doing an ellipse on the screen, And what were these for values?
The first two are for where it's gonna be.
So
the
X and Y,
X and Y position. Then the last one is for its size.
okay, width and height.
Mm.
So if var X position is 50, what do I expect to see for this ellipse?
Gonna be a 50.
That the X is at 50. So we expect it to be where? Do we remember where we start counting from? Where is 0, 0 on this screen?
In the top corner.
Top left corner is 0, 0. So I go over by 50. I go down by 350. Where do I end up? Well, if I were to look at which corner will it show up in, how would you describe it? You think at the right? You think up and right? Okay, so Kobe says here. Michael, do you agree?
I say down there.
Down here?
No.
Here?
Yeah, over there.
Okay, so X, Y. What do you think, Texas?
I would say the same. Bottom one.
Bottom left?
Yes.
Lila? Where is this ellipse gonna show up?
Oh, I
Which
didn't
corner?
see zero. I didn't see the X is zero.
That you say that X is 0?
Yeah.
No, X is not 0.
What's that?
If you look on screen number 2 on this, you'll find the exact same if you're having trouble seeing. This says var X position equals 50. And then it uses this ellipse X position 350, 100, 100.
Oh, so it would be bottom.
You're thinking bottom left?
No.
Why do you think that?
Because I thought the 50 was going down and the 350.
Oh. Now, just like any other thing when you're doing coordinates, X, then Y. So it's always going to be the horizontal first, then the vertical. But hey, it's important to know why you thought differently. We all make mistakes. Okay, so this, if I come over to my instructions here, I'm going to scale that down a little bit. It says we need to predict. So is it going to be an oval really? Looks like it's going to be a circle
It is a circle.
because width and height is the same. Will appear in the bottom left. And now I can run. And what do you get? Circle in the bottom left. So what does this do? What does that X position do? Why didn't they just put 50 right here? What do you think, Gabe?
I think maybe they would want to put X position there if they wanted to, like, if on a bigger project, if they wanted to do like maybe a bunch of the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then they could just store that all into the variable,
Mm-hmm.
and then instead of putting all that, they would just look at X position.
No, you're completely right. So by doing it this way, even though like I take 2 lines of code and with something that I could easily just do with one, I've made it more general. I can use this in such a way that I can change the position just by changing this one line right here, and anything that's using this X position will change with it. Okay, so all I have to do is change it up at the top, and we always define these variables at the top. It's kind of important. So what happens if I change this number? What if I change it to 350? Will it let me? I guess it won't. says view only. Am I actually on me? Yeah. So if I changed it to 350 though, what would you expect?
It would be,
If this were 350, we would have 350, 350, and it would show up now on the bottom right. So we're changing the X position, that if I change this number, it's just gonna change where it is located along the bottom here. Okay, let me get our sound back. There we go. Okay, so questions to consider. What are the variables used to do? How do I create a variable and assign it a value? And what kind of things can go into a variable? Now remember, this is just like a container. Very loud.
Most apps keep track of pieces of information that change and update as you use the app. For example, a simple game can keep track of your score and the number of lives you have left as you play.
So here, you could have in a video game, these are common variables. Something that keeps track of the score, something that keeps track of the number of lives. Now what happens normally for score? How does that normally change?
goes up or down.
Usually goes up, sometimes it could go down. What happens with the number of lives?
It goes down.
Typically goes down unless there's some sort of bonus that allows it to go up. So we expect to see increases for score and decreases for lives.
Apps utilize the computer's memory to do this, and learning how to use that memory when programming is a really powerful skill. The most common way to leverage a computer's memory is by creating a variable. Now, a variable is just a container for storing a value, and once created, the variable is stored in the computer's memory, and it can be used and updated repeatedly throughout your program. As an example, let's use variables to keep track of the score and the number of lives remaining in a hypothetical game. Creating the variable is really easy. You use the word var followed by a label that you want to give the variable. You can choose any label you want, but it helps to choose a word that describes the variable that you want to store. So let's
Okay, I'm going to pause there again. Naming variables with a good name, one that makes sense, is essential. Okay? You want to avoid making nonsense stuff or things that only make sense to you. You want that variable name to make sense to anyone that reads it to go, oh yeah, that's the container for storing this piece of information. Okay, so you don't want it super long, but you do want it descriptive and for it to make sense for the job that it's trying to do.
label our first variable score to keep track of the score. And then we can create a second variable to keep track of lives. Remember these labels. You'll need them later in order to use the variables. We can assign a value to the variable using the equal sign, like this. Let's set our starting score to 0 and our number of lives to 3.
So you notice here.
Remember, you only need to use the
declaring
var at the
and
time that
assigning
you want
are
to
two
create a
separate
new
things,
variable.
but they
A
don't
common
have-
mistake is to use it every single time you want to refer to a variable. Also, be sure to avoid mixing up the order when you call your variables. The label's got to appear on the left, and the value has to appear on the right, like this, not like this. Often, you'll want to create a variable and assign it a value right away. There's a really convenient way to do this with one line of code. This is sometimes called initializing the variable. It's important to realize that this single line of code is actually doing two things. First, creating the variable, and then second, assigning it a value. Let's take a moment to talk about the equal sign. In many coding language, the equal symbol is called the assignment operator.
Okay, so this is an assignment operator. It actually does not mean equals. Okay, all we're doing is we're putting a particular value into a container, it's not the same thing as equals. Okay, so he's gonna tell you the language that we use, which, you know, we will learn later on as we start to change variables, what it needs to be in order to have an equal sign. In coding, an equal sign is equal, equal. You have to have two equal signs in order for it to look for what is equal to. Okay? So this is just assigning a particular value.
Because you use it to assign a value to a variable. And you're probably used to seeing it in math, but in programming it's a little bit different. If you were in math class and you saw this, something would definitely be wrong. Score can't possibly equal both 5 and 7, but this is not math class. With code, a computer is executing a set of instructions, one after the other. So this would just tell the computer to set score to 5, and then on the next line, set it to 7. In an effort to avoid confusion, programmers often don't use the word equals when we see this sign. Instead, they use the phrase gets the value. So when we see a statement like this, we could read it as score gets the value 7, or score gets 7 for short. Some programming languages avoid the confusion entirely by representing the assignment statements with a sideways arrow, like this. To use a variable, you just refer to it by its label. Anywhere the variable name appears in the program, the value currently stored in the variable will be retrieved from memory. The tricky part is that when using a variable, you often can't see visually what its value is. To bypass that problem, you can use console.log.
Okay, so now they're going to use this command called console.log. Now, right now, if you run the program, you can't see anything about that variable. But by putting this console.log in, and we put the variable name in, what shows up is this down here. Okay, this console.log refers to your debug console.
To display the value like this. This is a really handy trick, but remember there's a difference between showing the value of a variable and writing out the variable's label. When text appears in quotes, you're telling the computer to write those literal ASCII characters on the screen like this.
Do you understand the difference there, guys? So in here, if I put quotation marks, what will show up is exactly letter for letter, symbol by symbol, what is in between the quotation marks. If I want it to show what's stored in that particular variable container, I need to remove those quotation marks, and then it will display what is the value of the container.
But on the other hand, without quotes, the computer assumes that you're referring to a variable called score, and it will attempt to retrieve its value. If you haven't made that variable, then the computer will give an error.
Always have to declare first. Okay, so continuing on. So which corner of the screen is the circle going to be drawn? We have two variables, x position and what's the y. And we have an ellipse set to the variables x position and what's the y. So if this is 0, 0 up here, where do I expect to see the ellipse? What do you think?
Top
Top,
right.
top right? And that's what we got. Because we're going over by 300 in the x position, and then by 100 in the y position.
No.
I know, tough day, right? Okay, now naming variables is extremely important. There are things that we can't use in variable names. You'll notice right here, here's these three particular rules. Labels can't have spaces. I can't name something with two words unless I put those two words directly together. You know, that's why you sometimes see people use camel case. I don't see an example of it here, but where they put a capital at the start of the new word, but there's no capitals otherwise. Okay, labels can't start with a number, and the capitalization and spelling has to be the same every time we use that particular name. Okay, now you'll notice here this shows error, 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 error. With these errors, the code cannot carry out at all. So what's the problem with number 1?
Spaces.
There's spaces. So what could I do? There's a couple different ways I could change that. I could, instead of spaces, use underscores. And then it's perfectly fine, other than I need to change it further down below. I could also go camel case, where I go size, capital O for of, capital C for circle. I could just literally just have it all one word, size of circle. The important thing is I can't have spaces. So whichever way you choose to do it, you have to follow through about that down below in line 6 to change the variable name in line 1 and change that same variable name in line 6. Okay, what's the problem with number 2, Kobe?
It has a number.
Okay, so I could say like 1 dimension with all caps up front, but I can't put a number in. But I could spell out the number. Now when I do that, I still need to fix it down in line 6. It could also work if I just take out the number 1 and don't put anything back. I could put it all lowercase.
You can put it after.
You could put dimension 1, yeah. You could. Okay. And you notice that every time that I'm doing this, I'm making sure that my capitalization and the spelling from where they were initialized, that's where I declare them and assign the value. When I call it and use it, I spell it exactly the same. Now, we don't have any more red errors. Okay, it would actually kind of carry it out, but it says Y location is defined but not called. Here it says Y location hasn't been declared. What's up with that? What's up with this? Texas?
In the very bottom line, line 6, Y location, the Y is uppercase,
Okay, and it needs to be,
lowercase.
so if I'm changed this to lowercase, look, all those warnings go away. The capitalization had to be the same between Y location in line 3 and Y location in line 6. So now if I go to run it, it runs just fine. Okay? And at this point, because I have no more errors, I can go back to show blocks, and it will show me the blocks once again. Before that, when you have those red errors like that, it won't allow you to switch, which is annoying, really annoying sometimes. Okay, so now we're going to look at using a variable more than once. It says this program has only one variable. That's this purple one right here. You'll notice in your toolbox, you have tools for drawing like you had before, but now we have our tools, if we click over onto variables, where we can declare and assign, or if we just assign. And remember, anytime you need more information, you can click on see examples and it will show you how to do things. I could also go to help and tips and it gives me more information. Go back to the instructions. Okay. It says change the number assigned to petal size so that the red petals touch one another. It says try to find the size that makes the most sense. So let's look and see what size they're at right now. If I run it, do those petals touch? No. They all touch the black, but the red needs to touch each other. What do you think might be a good size?
I'd 100.
75.
Okay, I'm gonna go 75 first. Reset, run. Ooh, those touch. 75 would be fine. 100. I touch a little further. Could I do 200?
Oh, that's a little bit.
Sort of. They don't really look like petals anymore. How about 65? Nope. 65 is not enough. 70, so the minimum I'd say is probably close to that 75. 73 I think makes it 2. So that's probably your minimum level, and that I wouldn't go past the 200. Like I don't even know if I'd say that 200 really works. Now they say that it is used 8 different times. So here we have the variable set up, and they have called petal size 1, 2, 3, 4. How's it 8?
They say the name 2 times.
They do say the name 2 times. Why? Why is petal size used twice in line 9 and 10 and 11 and 12?
They use it twice.
Because it's 4.
What?
Because it's 4.
Yeah, there's 4 of them. What did the 4 stand for again? X and Y and
Oh, X and Y and width and length.
width and height. So
Width and length.
by keeping the width and the height the same size, we get circles. If we didn't have the width and the height the same size, we wouldn't have circles. That's why they use this petal size in 2 locations, so they can get the nice round circles. Okay, if I were to change this, that we had a different value, like maybe we say that this is 200 instead, what do you expect to happen?
Bigger.
It's bigger. What's going to be bigger? This first circle at 150, 200 is going to have a much higher or longer height. That's this one right here. And so if we had all 4 of them like this, we wouldn't see a flower anymore quite the same way. Okay? So they're using petal size in each location. So we get this nice open flower. Da-da-da! Okay. So, can we make the circle so big that it fills up the whole screen? What is the minimum number in order to make that work?
400.
Well, right now this is circle size 400. Let's see what happens. So this takes up the entire width and height, but it's leaving these corners. So what did I hear from someone? 1200?
600 works.
600 works? Could we go smaller? What if we go 500? Is that not big enough?
500 is not big enough.
No, definitely not. How about 550?
Works.
Nope, actually it doesn't. I can see a little bit of white, and a little bit of white, and a little bit of white.
555. No?
Nope, still see corners.
I think it's
560. Oh, I can just make out the very edges of the circle.
565.
565. At 565, that's our minimum size to cover the whole thing. That's just with the circle that's located at the very center of the screen. Da-da-da! Okay, let's debug some variable names again. Okay, it says something's wrong in the program below. We're trying to create this image. So what is our problem here? We have a variable x and variable y. They each have values assigned to them. So it looks like we have the right color. What's wrong with line 5?
It doesn't have the X.
It's capitalized.
It has an x, doesn't have a value because the value is assigned up here. But is lowercase x the same as capital X? They're seen as two entirely different things. It's like having 3 people named Chris, right? Their spelling's not the same, the capitalization may not be the same. So we need this the same as the variable, and when we do that, it disappears. But now it will run line 5 properly. Now, what's wrong with line 6?
The Y is
The Y is capitalized, and we need that to be lowercase too. Otherwise, like if you've constantly used capitals throughout your code, but you just, didn't use it the same way on the variable, change the variable name then. Choose whatever's going to be less work for you. But now we get it to show exactly the same. Da-da-da! So is this pretty easy to follow along?
Yeah.
Okay. How about unused variables? It says make this code easy to read by using variables. Okay. So we have an ear size, an eye size, and a center. So when we run it, we get the right shape. The code looks to be fine. But, anytime that I want to make a change on something, I'm going to have to change each and every one of these numbers down below. Now, we already have these variables set at 80 and at 15 and at 200. That I think that we could use these in the spots below that. If we make a change here, it will apply everywhere. So what could I do? Okay. We have 4 ellipses to begin with, which are ear, the face, and kind of the muzzle or the nose. Okay. So here, 80 is the ear size. I can change this here to ear size. This was camel case. S is capitalized in the center. Ear size. And this is where I like to flip over to text just because I find it easier to copy and paste. I'm gonna come back over here where I have ears. Go ear size, ear size. Does it change the picture at all? Not one bit. But now if I change this here, if I change this to 150, watch what happens to the ears. And all that took was one change in code up here if I wanted to modify that image. But right now we're setting it at 80. And we don't have to make any changes other than we want to make sure that we're using these variable names. So right now, ear size, we've added in. Where are we going to need eye size? That's 15. So where you see 15 in line 12 and line 13, you need to put this eye size. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to come down here and go paste, comma, paste. No, Control V, comma, Control V. And I'm going to do it again on line 13. Control V, comma, Control V. And if I do that, it still doesn't change the picture. But now I have better control over the eye size, that all I have to do is change the one number up here, and it changes everything below. So where do we make use of 200? Where do you see 200 used? Well, that's this right here. We can say center. And I'm going to copy that and put it in the next line. And I'm going to put it, the next time I see 200, so we have the exact same image, but now anytime that I change these values, it changes everything. So I'm looking at this, center, which one is this? I'm going to switch these back to 200 because I want to see which things it's changing here. There's certain things that I want to maybe change. Okay, but this is why we make use of these variables, is so that I can change it once and it will change it everywhere thereafter. Any questions on that one? No? Was this too easy? Seems like it so far, maybe? Oh, actually, let me go back up. That showed me something different that I wasn't expecting. No? The same thing. I don't think I've ever seen this group command before. So they gave an example here, like if you wanted to create a swarm of bees following a mouse, that you could actually create a set of sprites all together, so that rather than setting them all up separately, you can create a group of those. So that could be useful for some of our games and animations in the future. Okay, debugging the bad naming. So these things have to be in the right order. Okay, so what's the order? Oh, well, we already have a problem. What's our problem?
The first variable is not named correctly. Can't
Okay, what do I need to do?
You can put an underscore or just erase the space.
Okay, I could put an underscore, I could just get rid of the space. And so now if I reset and run, what now? What else is happening?
Oh, now you need to put that variable, a new variable on the other ones.
How about if I just take out this and I just name it all size? Like everything down here is size.
Oh, yeah.
That might be quicker.
Yeah.
I could introduce shape underscore in front of everything. Well, let's try that. Reset, run. Does that look good? Red, yellow, green. Wow, that wasn't bad at all.
Yeah, I didn't do one red. I went through all of them good too.
Da-da-da! Okay, so we've done all 4 activities. Okay. So what I want you guys to do on your own, and you will have a couple minutes today, and I will give you tomorrow, is you need to use the variables to fix his face and to do these challenges. Okay, so we're going to use different colors of variables. We're going to draw the little robot. We're going to use variables in order to create a string of things like this. And then obviously fix his eyes. Does everyone fix the eyes?
Yes.
That was the easy part, right?
I already fixed that.
That's the question. That eye looks a little messed up. I need to think. It's kind of fun to play though with different values to see what it does. Sometimes just in case you know what it's gonna do in the future. This kind of looks like someone punched him.